A very good morning, 6 after 8 o'clock. Nice to have you in our company this morning for at least the next 2 hours up until 10 o'clock. We cross over and we are going to be talking with our first guest, and that, of course, is you, Peter Gift Mutasa, Chairperson Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition based in Zimbabwe. A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julia, and thank you for inviting me. Good morning, viewers and listeners.
Okay, before we get to the heart of the matter, obviously that is Mnangagwa wins a second term in the presidential elections. Obviously, in Zimbabwe, this happened last week. We also know that the opposition has strongly rejected those results. Let's understand who you are and what your organization stands for.
Right, so I am a civil society leader and a trade union leader. I've been the chairperson for Zimbabwe Congress of the president for Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions for the past 5 years, and I'm now the former president. I also am a general secretary of the banking sector union in Zimbabwe. But I chair the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, which is an amalgamation of civil society, various civil society, trade unions, churches, students' movements, community-based organizations, and many other NGOs operating in Zimbabwe. Our brief or our mandate is to fight for democracy. We wish to see democratic Zimbabwe, and we fight for good governance and equitable economic structure in Zimbabwe.
Okay, so as I said earlier on, Zimbabwe's President Mnangagwa has won the second term. The opposition obviously rejects it outright. The Elections Commission is saying that Mnangagwa won 52.6% of the vote compared with 44% for challenger Nelson Chamisa. We're also hearing that the elections were not free and fair. There was a lot of intimidation, rigging of statistics, just the whole situation as how the day started regarding when people went to the polls. Ballot sheets were not available. It started way too late, and the list goes on. How do you view it, being being the chairperson of Crisis in Zimbabwe? Do you believe it was fair? It was a fair election, and people were not, in fact, intimidated. And this is what the people are saying. Have the people truly spoken from their hearts?
Yeah, so the Zimbabwean crisis has been going on for a long time. Crisis in the Zimbabwe Coalition itself was formed in 2001 as a way of civil society, trade unions, and churches and students' movements coming together to try and address the crisis that has been happening in Zimbabwe. And this was a crisis against fighting against intention by the ZANU-PF government, then led by Robert Mugabe, which was seeking to have a one-party state and which was seeking to take away the gains of the liberation struggle when Zimbabweans went into Mozambique, Zambia, Tanzania, all over the world, fighting against colonial government. One of their major demands was one man or one woman, one vote. And this was at stake in 2001 when Zimbabweans had formed a formidable opposition party movement for democratic change. So it is not a crisis that started with these elections. We've had perennial contested electoral results and contested electoral processes. But what has been a common feature is that all this has been orchestrated by the government of ZANU-PF. So we need to look at it broadly from that perspective, that this is not a new problem. It is a problem that has seen Zimbabweans crossing over to South Africa in massive, in thousands or hundreds of thousands. It is a crisis that has seen us everywhere in the world as economic refugees and political refugees. So we have had crisis that led to a military coup in 2017. And part of the objective, or part of what was said to be objectives of the military coup by the leaders of the military and the current administration, was that they wanted to address democratic deficiencies. They want to bring freedom for people to choose a government of their own. And they blamed all that to Robert Mugabe and a faction in ZANU-PF, which is called the G40 or Generation 40. So from 2017, people had some hope that things were going to change. But we witnessed again that in 2018 election, things did not change. So we have been seeing consolidation of authoritarian rule since the coup, and especially after 2018, the government has been coming up with authoritarian policies and laws. We've seen draconian laws like the Patriotic Bill, which actually outlaws what we are doing, giving an interview to external foreign people and talking about the country. We have also seen the Private Voluntary Organizations Bill, which seeks to muzzle dissent and also to silence civil society. We've seen many other pieces of law like cybersecurity with one objective: to silence dissent. The government has been failing to provide in terms of economy. We have the highest inflation, highest unemployment, people are suffering. The government has been failing to provide in terms of public services. Our hospitals are death chambers, no medicine, no equipment, health workers are demotivated. Our schools are decaying, all the infrastructure is decaying. So the government lacks in output legitimacy, and it knows that people are angry. So over the past 5 years, it has been trying to play around the elections. It took over the main opposition, MDC, and gave it to their own puppet, Douglas Monsora and others. They literally destroyed the opposition, hoping that this particular period there won't be an opposition to oppose it in the 2023 elections. We've seen them creating quasi state security organizations like the Forever Association of Zimbabwe, or FAZ, which has been tormenting citizens and villagers mostly in the rural areas. We saw it operating during the election day, as also observed by SADC Observer and AU and Commonwealth Observer missions. It was intimidating people. Villagers were asked to register to FAZ desk before they go and vote, and come back and explain that they voted for the ruling party. This is unprecedented in all our elections. Even though we had challenges with elections before, this was way, way out of this world. So intimidation was going on. This intimidation did not start on the voting day. We have been witnessing villagers being threatened with violence equivalent to 2008 political violence. We've also witnessed the visitors being discriminated on food aid, especially areas where there were food insecurity. So people were told that if you don't vote for the ruling party, you will not be getting food aid. We also saw intimidation through the killings, political motivated killings of opposition party members in 2018 before the election campaign. We saw people were killed in Kwekwe, the Kwekwe rally, and also before these elections, there was a gruesome murder of an opposition activist, female opposition activist, Blessing Ali. And all this was meant to prepare people's minds that if you challenge ZANU-PF, you are going to be killed or you are going to be brutalized. And we have also now political activists reminiscent of the colonial era. Job Sekala is in prison, Job Garfun was in prison, and these were all imprisoned for their political activism, which are entitled, which they are entitled in terms of the constitution. But you are going for an election full aware that if you go out there and protest and campaign, you have political prisoners that have gone there for more than a year without trial, detention without trial. And if you do the same, if you exercise your rights, you are going to be imprisoned just like them. So there were a lot of issues to do with traditional leaders marshalling people to vote for ZANU-PF and threatening to remove people from their ancestral land in rural areas. People in the farming areas who were given land through land reform were also being threatened to be removed from their farms. Public or state media was also not covering the opposition, and each time it tried to cover the opposition, it was covering it in a negative way. We have a partisan police, which was also banning opposition rallies. Over 100 rallies of Chamisa were banned, according to what Chamisa told us at his last rally. We also have a partisan police that would arrest even victims of political violence. They go and report, and they are from opposition, but it was giving immunity and unlawful immunity to the ruling parties and PF activists who were committing serious crimes. And these are the issues that tainted this election, and this was confirmed by various observers. But of importance is the conclusion of the SADC election observation mission, which for the first time was candid and also raised all these issues bullet point by bullet point, and downgraded these elections as not, or is falling short of the requirements of the Constitution and the SADC guidelines on democratic elections.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we can continue this discussion. Sadly, this from a country that was once the breadbasket of the entire continent of Africa. We'll be back with you in a minute or two.
Day. This is Salam Media.
Ah, the kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those freshly stacked pancakes early in the morning, or for that late-night snack munchies. We are in there together, cooking, eating, and celebrating life together. Let's keep the kitchen a place that is shared by everyone, where we build stronger bonds and grow together. Sunfoil, Now We Cooking. Visit nowwecooking.co.za for recipes that everyone can help make.
Conveniently located along the banks of the Crocodile River bordering the Kruger National Park, as a guest at Buckler's Africa Lodge, one can enjoy an amazing sunrise or sunset on our spacious deck area while you catch a glimpse of some wildlife sightings along the Crocodile River. The sounds of the African savannah will greet you whilst you enjoy your morning coffee. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Buckler's Africa Lodge is ideally situated only 6 kilometers from the Crocodile Bridge Gate in the Kruger National Park. Catering for all travelers with variety, we have 4 types of the finest rooms: superior rooms, deluxe suites, and 2-bedroomed family units. Each room is equipped with the finest amenities to make your stay unforgettable. Guests can choose between the self-catering option or book their accommodation with breakfast and dinner included. Buckler's Africa Lodge is your ideal location for the ultimate Kruger getaway experience. We specialize in exhilarating and educational game drives in Kruger, tailor-made to suit your family. Inquire about our various accommodation offerings and other activities. Visit www.tingana.co.za for more information. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Experience the pulse of Africa with us.
Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
There's no smell that takes me back to the comfort of my childhood than the smell of black seed oil being applied by my nanny. Now I'm using Tib Black Seed in my own home. to soothe sniffles and coughs, to help with digestion and immunity, and of course, as part of my beauty routine. After all these years, I've come to appreciate the wisdom in finding comfort and shifa in trusted treatments like Tib Black Seed. You can find Tib Black Seed at all leading pharmacies or find out more at blackseed.co.za.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Albeit Lodge. Your true home away from home. Albeit is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Albeit has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albeitlodge.co.za.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. I am talking with Chairperson of Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition based in Zimbabwe, and that is Peter Gift Mutasa. Now, this is what the head of the European Union's Observer Mission on Friday had to say about the vote that took place in Zimbabwe. And I quote, "Climate of fear, Southern African Regional Bloc SADC's mission noted issues including voter delays, issues with the voter roll, bans on opposition rallies, and biased state media coverage." Welcome back, Peter. How are the democratic people with democratic ideas about Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe's, I guess, place in world politics, and of course the upliftment of the economy of their people who are suffering desperately? How do you guys and like-minded people like yourselves move ahead in this atmosphere of absolute oppression?
We have been reaching out to the region, to the world, and to the continent, arguing our case for a long time, that despite the propaganda that you hear from Zimbabwe government, where they brand everyone who is raising constitutional challenges or who is demanding justice, freedom, and equality as a puppet of the West, we've been telling everyone that we are dealing with a government that has gone rogue, which is turning this state into a pariah state where currently the constitution has been suspended, all our constitutional rights have been taken away. On paper, we have a very progressive constitution, but none of those constitutional rights are being respected by the government. In fact, we are basically under a de facto military rule where the constitution does not apply, where even the constitutional structures of that provides checks and balances are taken away. There's now conflation between the ruling party and the state, and judiciary independence has been taken away. It's been manipulation of the judiciary, co-optation of the judiciary, where on the eve of going for an election, the judges are bribed with over almost $500,000, and they are supposed to be arbiters in the electoral disputes after pocketing such an amount, where all state institutions' powers have been taken and are now enforced with the executive or with the ruling party. So we have been talking about these issues for a long time. Unfortunately, in the region, governments in SADC have been standing in solidarity with the government in Zimbabwe. They've been taking the propaganda hook, line, and sinker and accepting every propaganda line that the government has been pushing. The government has been pushing a propaganda line that it is under attack for imperialist. But what we are seeing is that it is a government that is attacking its own citizens. Before we talk about the external forces. We need to be talking about the state-society relations in the country. So we still appeal to all our friends, progressive movements in the region, progressive movements in the continent, in the whole globe, that Zimbabweans are under serious repression. And this repression is repression of unarmed and defenseless citizens against a heavily armed and brutal government, which has caused many people to lose lives. You remember on 1 August 2018, after the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission failed to announce presidential elections, 6 people were killed in broad daylight, which resulted in a commission of inquiry that was headed by former President Kgalema Motlanthe. And they came up with a very good report against very serious recommendations. None of those recommendations have been taken on board by the government. So it is disregarding Electoral Observation Commission's report. It is disregarding commissions of inquiry reports, disregarding its own constitution. And we have nowhere to go besides asking the region. Because if we want to protest, if we take into the space of protest is allowed by our constitution, people will be killed again in broad daylight. We're just like what we were witnessing during apartheid, where the government of that time, a government minority was brutalizing majority, and it was taking away civil liberties and political liberties. There is no difference from what was happening in apartheid to what we are witnessing today in Zimbabwe. Currently, people are being abducted. We've heard that before. Someone was abducted, an opposition person was abducted yesterday, but one. And we've witnessed the people being abducted for carrying out trade union work, for being church leaders, for being students leaders. People are being imprisoned for exercising their constitutional rights. So we are under pressure. We are sinking. We are appealing to the region. We are appealing to the continent and to the world that they must come and help Zimbabweans. If that does not happen, we have no choice. The majority of Zimbabweans already are applied for their passports. We're going to continue scattering around as economic and political refugees. And this is not good for the region. This is
Absolutely.
why we are calling for the regions to intervene.
Okay, let's ask you this final question then. If nothing changes, if the international community doesn't intervene, it's going to be worse than ever for the people of Zimbabwe. The corruption and I guess the threats will continue and the corrupt will continue enriching themselves. Last week, I spoke to Mr. Rutendo, who was very, very angry at me, and he had an outburst with me live on air because I asked the question of intimidation and a failing government. That's how I open up my program. And he was really angry with me on air. And I said, and he accused me and the report that I was sharing with him on air that it was very biased. And I said, well, if that is the way you feel, then please fix, give us your version of what you believe is happening in Zimbabwe. According to him, and I'm sure you know Mr. Rutendo, he belongs to some civic organization. According to him, Zimbabwe, the current government has done marvelously well. Zimbabwe's produced bumper crops. Things are getting healthier right across the board. Civil society are in a better space than they were for in a very, very long time. And he says the economy is growing. There is hope, and the current government is doing all it possibly can to revive the economy and improve the conditions of Zimbabweans. I then, obviously, because I gave him the opportunity to supposedly fix the narrative, because he accused me of giving a false narrative on air. But subsequent to that, I now hear that the very same Mr. Rutendo has threatened to take another radio station here in South Africa to the Broadcast Complaints Commission, because I presume they too approach their story from a similar narrative that I have done. What can you tell us about that type of narratives that being fed to the foreign media, and I guess to Western and other countries? Is he correct? Is he wrong? Is he possibly very um, committed and loyal to ZANU PF, that he comes with that narrative and threatens other media houses that he's going to sue them for false narratives that we're putting out in the public space?
Well, it would have been ideal if he was here, we are discussing with him, but I've been following Mr. Rutendo. He's a fellow Zimbabwean. But what I can point out is that he is one of the early economic refugees who ran away from Zimbabwe, in my view, and he has been in South Africa being taken care by the people of South Africa. If everything is rosy, as he says, him and many other Zimbabweans who are in South Africa would eagerly be operating from Harare, Hawaii, Tare. And we are aware that he openly defends the regime, the ZANU-PF regime, but I don't think he can, or anyone, including the government officials, can stand up and say everything is rosy, Zimbabwean economy is perfect. We have the highest inflation rate in the world. We have massive devaluation of the currency. Workers in Zimbabwe are earning far below the poverty line. We still have a minimum wage of 25,000 local currency, which is less than 20 US dollars. We still have security guards earning below 100 US dollars in real terms. We still have domestic workers earning less than 100 US dollars. And this is an amount that cannot carry an individual, not a family, throughout the month. We have massive deterioration of our health services sector. Watching on a Zimbabwe journalist who was telling us that 75% of the babies that are delivered in Musina Hospital belong to Zimbabwe mothers who are crossing over to South Africa to get medical care. Many of our people are dying in their homes because they cannot afford medical care. The hospitals do not have basic medicines. Many students are dropping out in grade 7, and almost all our public schools are without basic textbooks and basic infrastructures like desks and chairs. We have a lot of families who are failing to provide 2 meals a day, and people are struggling and suffering. Mr. Rutendo is enjoying in South Africa and is enjoying public service, good public services. He can go to hospitals, he can take his kids to school. If things were all right in this country, then he must come in back to Zimbabwe, live in Zimbabwe, enjoy what he sees as the best time in Zimbabwe. But he's
Why
not
do you
doing that.
suppose? Can I come in here, please? And this is my final question to you. Why do you suppose that he is so fiercely protective of ZANU PF? Is he one of those real die-hard supporters that he refuses to see the wood for the trees and truly admit that Zimbabwe is all but on its knees, on its death knell, so to speak?
I'm not sure, and I don't know what may be motivating them. But in general, the government of Zimbabwe has been paying a lot of people to project its image. You have seen even South African celebrities and journalists coming to Zimbabwe pocketing millions just to project the Zimbabwe government as a very progressive government and project things as going on well. And these are people who were held high at South African big celebrities were in Zimbabwe wearing the ZANU-PF scarf and projecting that Zimbabwe is doing well. People are being bought. We've even seen institutions being co-opted and political leaders, the elites in those institutions being paid handsomely. There was a war chest for this particular election, as reported by Al Jazeera World Mafia documentary, that it says 240 million United States dollars was reserved for these elections. Many people are feeding from the gravy train, and they have to work and to project Zimbabwe as doing well against what is on the ground. So we don't know whether it's voluntary, whether it's he's just doing it for free, but we know a lot of people are being paid to do so.
Okay, that's where we have to leave it. A really very bleak picture that you have painted there. Wish I had more time to talk with you. Just very, very quickly, one last question. Do you believe that Western governments who will not intervene to try and help Zimbabwe get back on track have an ulterior motive? And what would that be?
Ordinarily, we don't want any external forces to intervene in the Zimbabwe crisis. It would have been ideal if we are to deal with our issues on our own. But we have seen that we cannot go anywhere. We are failing to go anywhere. So we prefer that the regional body, SADC, must intervene and help us the same way we were helped by the frontline states during the fight against colonialism. Our brothers in Tanzania, our brothers in Mozambique, Zambia, and all over the country helped us to resolve a crisis that was that we were facing. We think SADC and African Union are the bona fide bodies that must stand with the people of Zimbabwe and address our crisis. But our crisis is also global. So we welcome any global initiative, whether it's United Nations or whether it's any other continental bloc that wants to help us genuinely. What we are not in support of a civil society is for Zimbabwe to be put as a pawn or as a proxy of geopolitical contestations. We don't want the West to control us. We don't want the East to control us. We want to chart our own destiny, and we want genuine help from the globe, and continent, and the region.
Okay. Thank you indeed, Peter Gift Mutasa, Chairperson of the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition based in Zimbabwe, talking to us about the results of the election which was held last Wednesday in Zimbabwe. The time is exactly 8:40. News and views right here on Salam Media. Standing by to talk with us is someone from, just trying to get my bearings on the screen here. We, I think, are going to be talking with Thapelo Mohapi. Part of my screen has been chopped off here, so I do apologize for that. I think it's Thapelo Mohapi, Secretary General of the Shack Dwellers Movement, Abahlali Basemjondolo. So do stay with us. We're going to talk about that horrific incident in Lodium where 5 children were burned to death beyond recognition.